In the heart of our modern world, where progress and innovation seem to define our existence, there exists a tapestry of silenced voices, narratives relegated to the shadows, and stories left untold. Welcome to Unveiling Feminism. In this documentary, we embark on a journey to explore the overlooked, the taboo, and the controversial within the realm of feminism, transcending the boundaries of conventional discourse.
From the intersections of gender, age, and economic disparity, to the intricacies of reproductive rights and digital privacy, our exploration delves into the multifaceted layers of feminism in the 21st century. Here's a glimpse of the 1971 First Women's Liberation Movement March.
At the present time, it's a sort of watershed, I think. Women unite. You have nothing to lose but your kitchen sinks.
We want liberation! When are we gonna get it? Now! Free our sisters! Free ourselves! Free our sisters! Free ourselves! Free our sisters! Free ourselves!
Through intimate interviews, expert insights, and real-life stories sourced from the depths of the internet, Unveiling Feminism shines a light on the voices, often drowned out by the cacophony of mainstream media, misogyny, and patriarchy. It is a call to action, a challenge to confront the uncomfortable truths and engage in dialogue that transcends the surface.
Join us as we peel back the layers, unravel the complexities, and embark on a journey of discovery. This is Unveiling Feminism, because sometimes the most profound stories are found in the spaces between the lines. Welcome to the harsh reality of ageism, where the value of a person is often measured by the youthfulness of their appearance, rather than the depth of their wisdom.
In a society obsessed with perpetual youth, women bear the brunt of ageism, facing discrimination and marginalization as they grow older.
In the workforce, older women often find themselves pushed aside, replaced by younger, supposedly more dynamic counterparts. Years of experience and expertise relegated to the shadows of ageist stereotypes.
But the impact of ageism extends far beyond the workplace. In healthcare, older women are frequently overlooked, their ailments dismissed as a natural consequence of aging rather than deserving of proper attention and care.
A study by the National Bureau of Economic Research found that older job seekers receive significantly fewer callbacks for interviews compared to their younger counterparts. This discrimination is compounded for older women, who face both ageism and sexism.
A 2020 AAP report revealed that women aged 50 and older have experienced age discrimination. In healthcare, older women are frequently overlooked, their symptoms often attributed to just getting old rather than being properly diagnosed and treated.
And let's not forget the financial aspect. Retirement and pensions, supposed rewards for a lifetime of hard work, often reveal the stark gender disparities that persist in our society.
Due to lifelong wage gaps and the disproportionate burden of caregiving responsibilities, older women find themselves at a distinct disadvantage when it comes to financial security in their golden years. But amidst the bleakness, there is hope. By shining a light on the intersection of feminism and aging, we can challenge ageist attitudes, advocate for equitable policies, and ensure that every woman, regardless of age, is valued and respected.
Organizations like the National Council on Aging and ARP are advocating for policies that support older women, from fair hiring practices to better health care.
I wish people had told me what to expect when I was growing up, because I'm still growing up. I grew up in Vancouver. I was born in Ottawa. I was raised in Toronto, but I grew up when I got to Vancouver. We came here when I was 15 and a half, and boy, did I grow up. I got away from the family and the influences of stuffy Toronto, the stuffy Toronto that we lived in. I always depended on education. I valued it. It was valued in my family. To me, it was success. It was visible success. I was living in the British properties, 4 little children born in 5 years. Built the house around us, including me building a lot of it and digging and doing gardening with a shovel and pick. Seriously, it was just ridiculous when you look back, but I've always been a doer and I will not quit. So I just did everything that had to be done. And that, I went back, got my last child into school and went back to university to do a second degree. And what happened recently is that the shoulder is slipping, the actual shoulder joint. It's as though the glue had dried up, in a carpentry sense. The glue's dried up and crumbled, and my shoulder slips. And when it slips, it bites tissue and grabs the nerve, and then it bleeds internally. So that's what I have, and I have a limited shoulder. Part of the injury, I think, was the years of writing on the blackboard, because I've university teaching for years, as well as every level, literally. And you'll notice that I can only get my right arm up this high. Right up until this, I would be swimming 3 times a week. I live right down here, right downtown, so I walk everywhere. I walk to the opera, the symphony, I do all my shopping, I walk for fun. I really miss swimming because I can't, they won't let me right now. I miss tennis terribly. I miss skiing. These sports that were joy to me. I'm in my 84th year, and this is something I want to share with people. This is a process of aging. It is nothing other than a bit extraordinary work with that shoulder, but not much more than many other people. But this is going to happen. I had a little wish about a week ago, thinking, I wish people had told me what to expect when I was growing up. And I really mean growing up, because I'm still growing up. And if I had known that joints were going to go, okay, corners go, knees, hips. I never knew my shoulder would. So this is a condition that I will live with. And I couldn't be happier, because if that's the worst I have to handle, I'm amazed, because I can still use my hand if I am very careful of my arm, because I'm responsible for hurting myself. If I move that arm wrong, I create the pain. It's nothing the medical profession can stop for me. I have to stop it. I'm the watchdog. I went down and I said to them, the physiotherapy, I want a supportive structure made out of elastic or leather or whatever, like a football pad that holds my shoulder together so it doesn't slip. And the difference when it was on, oh, it's amazing. You can just feel the support. I think the thing that makes me happiest every day is the more I can interact with people, whether they be the kind neighbor that lives in my building, or being able to come down here and find the walking group that we went out with on Tuesdays and laugh and sit with them here, even for a half an hour. This is my neighborhood, and it's part of my joy to be in a neighborhood, and this is what keeps me bright, alert, and bothering, because otherwise, what is my purpose here?
In the world today, menstrual equity remains a pressing yet often overlooked issue. For many, access to menstrual products is a given, but for countless others, it is a daily struggle.
Imagine facing your period without the basic supplies needed to manage it. This is the reality for incarcerated women, homeless women, and those in developing countries.
Incarcerated women often receive inadequate menstrual supplies, if any at all, forcing them to use makeshift solutions that are unhygienic and demeaning. According to a report by the Prison Policy Initiative, many prisons provide women with just 10 to 12 sanitary pads per month, far below what is needed.
For homeless women, the cost of menstrual products can mean choosing between a meal or basic dignity. A A study by the Homeless Period Project found that 60% of homeless women have had to use period products for longer than recommended due to cost.
In developing countries, the lack of access to affordable menstrual products can lead to missed school days, perpetuating cycles of poverty and inequality. UNESCO estimates that 1 in 10 girls in sub-Saharan Africa miss school during their menstrual cycle, leading to higher dropout rates.
Girls drop out of school because they can't manage their periods discreetly or hygienically. This lack of access not only affects their education but also their future opportunities.
But menstrual equity doesn't stop at access. It also encompasses inclusivity, ensuring that all who menstruate are recognized and supported, regardless of their gender identity.
Transgender men and non-binary individuals who menstruate often face unique challenges. A survey by the National Center for Transgender Equality found that 36% of transgender individuals avoid public restrooms due to fear of confrontation or discrimination, a situation exacerbated by menstruation.
I'm Arlen, I'm a trans man, and I no longer get my period.
My name is Rihanna, I identify as non-binary, and I unfortunately have my period. I really hate my period. It's intrusive on my life, it doesn't do anything for me, and it hurts. I wish my body knew that I was non-binary so it could stop this. It could be like, yo, you don't want to be female? All right, we got you. Stop.
It was this major sort of difficulty that I would face once a month, not only physically, but hormonally, and it just added a lot of strife, I think, to my day-to-day existence.
It prevented me from doing things that I've always wanted to do.
It's this thing that can just be such a cataclysmic issue for people in relationships, in, activities, whether they're an athlete. That was a big part of my high school career.
My twin sister and I bond over everything, including our periods. Hers is a much more painful experience than mine. It's more of a mental issue for me. These are the cards that we were dealt with, so we gotta take it as we can and help each other out.
Not getting my period has been probably one of the most personally exciting parts of my transition. Not thinking about having tampons available or, having to just make sure what I'm wearing is okay if something were to spill.
They're very pink.
I think it starts with walking down the aisle. It's always listed, feminine hygiene, and everyone knows what's there. And your initial thought is, what is someone gonna think of me being in this space at all? I already felt odd walking into the women's restroom to begin with because I had short hair, I was androgynous. You get in front of all of the products and you see the pinks and the purples and the flowers. You're being forced into a lane that says pretty pink and dresses.
Doesn't look like it's changing as much as I would like to include the diverse sphere of females and non-binary folks who have periods.
Some people say, I can't have anything to do with pink, and that can really hurt and make life difficult for them. So when I first saw the Flex product, I was actually pretty amazed because it was this very sleek, sort of slender, well-designed menstrual cup. It lends itself to the ambiguity of the genders of the people who might be using them, and it doesn't feel like it's geared specifically towards women or specifically towards people who love the color pink and the people who love flowers and things like that. And I think that's something that is incredibly important for folks like myself. Many people menstruate, men can menstruate, and trans men and non-binary people exist with menstruation, and it's a topic that, should be less taboo because it's part of life. I think we really are existing in an age where there are people building solutions with us in mind.
Inclusive menstrual equity means acknowledging that menstruation is not exclusive to women. It means creating spaces where everyone who menstruates feels seen and supported.
By advocating for free or affordable menstrual products and fostering inclusive conversations, we can break down shackles of exclusion and ensure menstrual equity for all. Menstrual equity and inclusivity are fundamental to achieving gender equality. It's about dignity, health, and the right to live without shame or fear. Here is a glimpse of what menstrual equity truly means.
Menstrual equity it's the most important idea I think I've ever stumbled upon.
Menstrual equity means access to menstrual hygiene for anyone and everyone who needs it.
It goes further than that. It's truly a new way of looking at the world, asking that our laws and our policies acknowledge our bodies and the way they work,
It's about the overall end goal of gender equality.
Menstrual equity matters to all of us. We all stand to benefit when we are all operating at maximum capacity.
Still today, 36 states in the US have a sales tax on period products because they're considered non-essential goods. Meanwhile, products like Rogaine and Viagra are.
If half of the people who are in this country and live by the laws of our land menstruate, well, then our laws should reflect that and ensure that our best needs are met.
Every human deserves the right to discover and reach their full potential, regardless of a natural need.
Every day, millions of women around the world engage in unpaid care work, the invisible backbone of our societies. This labor, traditionally performed by women, includes caregiving for children, the elderly, and the sick, as well as managing household tasks.
Despite its critical importance, unpaid care work is often undervalued and unrecognized. It has a significant impact on women's financial independence and career advancement.
According to the International Labour Organization ILO, unpaid care work is valued at 9% of global GDP, amounting to $11 trillion annually. Yet it remains absent from our GDP calculations and economic discussions.
Women bear the brunt of this burden, which limits their ability to participate fully in the workforce and achieve financial security. A report by McKinsey & Company found that women perform 75% of the world's unpaid care work, averaging 4.1 hours per day compared to men's 1.7 hours.
This imbalance perpetuates gender inequality, as women are often forced to choose between career progression and their caregiving responsibilities. The result? A persistent wage gap and diminished opportunities for advancement, according to the World Economic Forum. It will take 257 years to close the economic gender gap at the current rate of progress.
One proposed solution to address these disparities is universal basic income, or UBI.
When you hear me say, hey, everyone gets $1,000 a month, you're like, wow, that sounds too good to be true. It is not too good to be true. My flagship proposal is a freedom dividend of $1,000 a month for every American adult starting at age 18. So that means that you would receive $1,000 a month every month. And this is a renaming of something called universal basic income, a policy that's been with the country since our founding. Thomas Paine was for it. He called it the citizen's dividend. Martin Luther King fought for it in 1967 in his book Chaos or Community. And it is what he was fighting for every day up to the day he was assassinated in 1968. Milton Friedman and 1,000 economists signed a study saying this would be tremendous for America. And it even passed the US House of Representatives twice in 1971. It came this close to being law. So this is not as radical as you might think. 44% of American jobs will be subject to automation in the next 20 to 30 years, 20 to 30% in the next 10 to 20 years. I mean, think about what that means. The most common jobs in the US economy are administrative and clerical, which includes call center workers, retail and sales, food service and food prep, truck driving and transportation, and manufacturing. Those 5 sectors are all going to shrink, and that's half of American jobs. And then you're looking at other white-collar jobs like insurance agents and financial advisors and accountants and bookkeepers, radiologists. Like a lot of professions are going to get affected by this. So the way we fund this universal basic income is that we look up and see who's winning in an era of incredible innovations. Amazon, Google, Facebook, Uber. And then you look closer and you see Amazon paid literally 0 in taxes in 2018. How is that possible? How could a $1 trillion tech company pay less in federal taxes than you or your parents? And so the way we fund the freedom dividend is we join every other advanced economy in the world and have a value-added tax that then gives the American public a tiny slice of every Amazon sale, every Google search, every Facebook ad, every robot truck mile, and returns it to your pockets. And there is one state that's had a dividend for almost 40 years where everyone in that state gets between $1,000 and $2,000 a year, no questions asked. Do you know what state that is? It's Alaska. And Alaska funds it with oil money. And what I'm saying to you is that technology is the oil of the 21st century, and what they're doing for Alaskans with oil money, we can do for all Americans with technology money. And here's the great thing. When you get that money, you spend it, it circulates through the economy over and over again. We get back hundreds of billions of dollars in new revenue as a result. We also save money on things like incarceration, homelessness services, emergency room healthcare, and we have a population that's healthier, mentally healthier, better educated, more productive. So this is going to pay for itself in a way that will benefit us all. This is the trickle-up economy, and it starts with universal basic income of $1,000 a month for every American adult starting in 2021, and that is why I'm running for president.
A 2020 candidate named Andrew Yang has brought up a topic that's big now of universal basic income. And before you destroy it with facts and logic, my question about it is everybody from Martin Luther King Jr. to Milton Friedman has advocated for some form of guaranteed income. And I think you can agree that usually when the government runs things, that maybe they don't end up very good. So if more money was focused on going into the hands of people without restriction, would you be in favor of some form of universal basic income?
So there is a distinction between different types of universal basic income. Sometimes by universal basic income, people just mean that the government is going to sign a check in addition to the current means-tested welfare programs that exist. Sometimes they mean, like Milton Friedman meant, a negative income tax, meaning we get rid of all of the welfare system, and instead we just sign you a flat check. Right? And that flat check basically is going to be for whatever you want it to be for. And I think that the record of universal basic income has not been particularly successful. They tried it in Ontario. They had to stop it because it was incentivizing people not to work. They tried it in Norway. It was also not particularly effective. They had to stop it because it was incentivizing people to be unwilling to work. It's an idea that makes sense only under the supposition that there is a group of legitimate unemployables. And that seems to be the growing perception these days, is that technology is going to take over. There's going to be a permanent underclass of people who simply can't get a job. They're going to be sitting on their butt. They won't literally have a means to live unless we sign them a check. I'm pretty skeptical of that line of economic thought, because that's been said about virtually every major technological development in the history of mankind, is that a new technological development will put an enormous swath of people out of work. That is true temporarily. It is not true permanently. We have effectively permanent full employment in the United States, under 4%. So the notion, and we have 7 million unfilled jobs right now, and people who are not filling them. So I don't really want to incentivize people to not go and get those jobs. If we ever reach the point where there is universal prosperity, to the point where there is no scarcity problem, where it's not a matter of redistributing finite resources, but a matter of resources are plentiful for everyone, then I think that or we reach a point where there is a permanent group of unemployables, as we say, then I think that we'll have no choice but to look at something like universal basic income. I just don't think we're there yet.
By providing a safety net, UBI could empower women to balance their unpaid care work with paid employment, reducing economic stress and enabling them to invest in their personal and professional development.
Critics, however, question the feasibility and cost of implementing UBI on a large scale. They argue that while UBI could address some economic disparities, it may not be enough to tackle the systemic issues that perpetuate gender inequality.
A report by the Brookings Institution raises concerns about the financial sustainability of UBI, estimating that a nationwide UBI program in the US would cost approximately $3.8 trillion annually.
The conversation around unpaid care work and UBI is complex and multifaceted. It requires us to rethink the value we place on caregiving and to seek innovative solutions that promote gender equality.
As we explore these critical issues, we must ask ourselves, how can we create a society that truly values and supports all forms of labor? And how can we ensure that no one, especially women, is left behind?
Sex work, a topic fraught with controversy, stigma, and complex legal issues. At the heart of the debate are the rights and protection of sex workers, individuals who deserve safety, dignity, and respect.
The discussion around decriminalization or legalization of sex work is multifaceted.
Of course, everybody should do what they want, and if people decide to take that as a job, they should get rights and not being criminalized.
The prostitution laws have always criminalized women, both on the street and indoors. But in recent years, because of through the last government, backed by the present government, we now have even more repressive legislation. There are many more women working on the streets now purely because of poverty. The rights sheet is going to be not only a tool in women's hands to defend ourselves against criminalisation, but also to educate people.
It's a simplified version of what the law is in relation to the offences they're likely to be accused of, in relation to their rights when the police come knocking on their door or arrest them, and in relation to the court process.
The most striking thing about the prostitution laws is that the police can bring prosecutions without bringing any evidence of force or coercion. So that charges of managing a brothel, controlling a brothel, trafficking are all brought without a single shred of evidence of force or coercion.
Is the law fair at all for these people?
I don't think it's very fair at all. I think it's completely unfair, frankly.
One of the trends that's happening in San Francisco and in the US is that, the police, instead of using soliciting, now they're using laws where they have a lot of discretion, like nuisance laws, loitering. They even charge women for waving to a car. We're really excited. We think this is a big victory for sex workers internationally to have this right sheet. And we're going to take it back and show everybody.
Fighting cases is really the way to go. It's very hard work fighting a case, but it really does work. Women are winning cases, women are having cases dropped. And even if women are convicted, they're having sentences, conditional discharges imposed so that they won't eventually have a conviction at all.
On one side, advocates argue that decriminalizing sex work would provide sex workers with legal protections, access to health services, and the ability to work without fear of arrest or violence.
I'm very adamant that I tell people, I introduce myself to people as a prostitute. And I do that for the sake of visibility and because of the positive impact it has on other people. So my name's Rebel Ray, and I'm a prostitute, and I'm a sex workers advocate. My role in activism came from enough big slaps in the face, like dealing with the police, dealing with assaults by the police. Everybody has horror stories and stuff, and it's all just bad policy. Years ago, I reported a rape from a client I was supposed to be working with, and I just wound up getting arrested. I spent a long time in jail for trying to report a rape, and you just learn better. No way I'll deal with the cops. I'll get raped 100 times before I do. And I'd rather take care of it myself. By decriminalizing sex work, you legitimize sex work as work, and it changes the way that we view and handle the people around us in our everyday lives, which includes sex workers.
All over the world, there are sex workers organizing and coming together to fight to recognize their labor and to have actual tangible laws passed that recognize that.
We are a strong and fierce community made up of every color, every race, every identity, every shape, every economy, every religion, and so much more. I want you to see us, the sex worker rights movement, as part of the solution and not the problem.
The more and more people ignore those voices, and the more people just avoid even trying to have the conversation because it's uncomfortable, the problems just get worse.
It does nothing good for anybody to criminalize sex work. The need for decriminalization's dire.
In countries where sex work has been decriminalised, such as New Zealand, there have been improvements in the health and safety of sex workers. According to the Prostitution Reform Act of 2003, sex workers in New Zealand report feeling safer and more able to report violence without fear of legal repercussions.
However, opponents raise valid concerns about exploitation and trafficking. They argue that decriminalization could inadvertently enable human traffickers and exacerbate exploitation within the industry.
A critical part of this conversation is the need to reduce the stigma associated with sex work. stigmatization isolates sex workers, making them more vulnerable to abuse and less likely to seek help when they need it. A study by The Lancet found that decriminalizing sex work could lead to a 46% reduction in HIV infections among sex workers over the next decade.
Stigma not only affects their personal lives, but also their access to essential services. Sex workers often face discrimination in healthcare settings, making it difficult for them to receive the care they need.
Improving safety and health services for sex workers is paramount. This includes providing comprehensive sexual health services, mental health support, and legal assistance. It also means creating safe work environments and offering resources for those who wish to leave the industry.
Addressing the complex issues surrounding sex work requires a nuanced approach that balances the rights and safety of sex workers with efforts to combat exploitation and trafficking. It's a delicate balance, but one that is essential for a just and equitable society.
As we delve deeper into the realities faced by sex workers, we must listen to their voices and experiences. Their stories are crucial in shaping policies that protect their rights and dignity. When we talk about reproductive rights, the conversation often centers around abortion. However, reproductive rights encompass a broader spectrum of issues that profoundly impact women's lives.
Two critical aspects of reproductive rights that often go overlooked are access to fertility treatments and the dark history and present reality of forced sterilization and reproductive coercion.
For many women, the dream of starting a family is hindered by the prohibitive cost of fertility treatments. Procedures like in vitro fertilization (IVF) can cost between $12,000 and $15,000 per cycle, making them inaccessible to many.
Insurance coverage for these treatments is often limited or non-existent, forcing women to bear the financial burden themselves. This disparity restricts reproductive choices and creates a barrier to family planning for those who cannot afford it.
The impact of limited access to fertility treatments is profound, affecting not only women's reproductive choices, but also their emotional and psychological well-being. The desire to conceive and the struggle to afford necessary treatments can be an all-consuming and heartbreaking journey.
Equally pressing is the issue of forced sterilization and reproductive coercion. Historically, marginalized communities, including women of color, the disabled, and the poor, have been subjected to these inhumane practices. Between 1907 and 1979, over 60,000 people were forcibly sterilized in the United States under eugenics laws.
These violations were justified under the guise of eugenics and public health, stripping women of their autonomy and right to make informed choices about their own bodies. But things did improve. For instance, California, one of the states, compensated survivors of forced sterilizations in 2021.
Thought, oh my God, like, I couldn't believe it. And then it wasn't until 2017 that I learned the truth and that this was a part of American history.
More than 20,000 people were sterilized against their will in the state of California during the 20th century, and Stacy's great aunt was one of them. It often happened inside mental health institutions where doctors arbitrarily sterilized patients they deemed unfit to reproduce, and the eugenics laws at the time allowed it.
Basically, what they were doing was these laws were targeting pretty much, it was very racist and classist. So it was targeting the immigrants or descendants of immigrants, as well as the poor. And so what they would do is there was this title feeble-minded that was being used quite often, and they would deem someone feeble-minded, and then in an effort to stop this feeble-mindedness, the goal was to stop them from reproducing.
In Mary Franco's case, she was being sexually abused by a middle-aged man, according to Cordova. Instead of receiving treatment for her trauma, a mental asylum in Southern California used her abuse to justify a tubal ligation, coercing her parents to sign these papers when she was still a child.
She was just 13 years old at the time that this happened. What did she know? What did she understand about this procedure?
She knew what had happened. She knew that she was no longer able to have children anymore after the procedure. I wish she got the help, because she really needed it. She battled a lot of things later on in life that I believe were due to, what had happened to her at such a young age. And it makes me sad that she blamed herself for it.
While most of this happened in the first half of the 1900s, it wasn't until 1979 that California's eugenics laws were repealed. Some historians believe California's mass sterilizations even influenced Nazi Germany's eugenics program. It's an ugly history that several American states share. The estimated number of forced sterilization victims across 32 states is more than 60,000. This week, a turning point in the pursuit of justice. As part of a budget deal signed by Governor Gavin Newsom, the forced or involuntary sterilization compensation program will allocate a total of $7.5 million to survivors of California's sterilization effort.
And it's not just an apology, but there's some material, acknowledgement of this harm.
Ana Valladares is with California Latinas for Reproductive Justice. She estimates nearly 400 living survivors may qualify for compensation. Those who come forward could receive up to $25,000 from the state.
And it's so important, again, to putting pressure on making sure that whatever protections or laws are being put forward, that they're actually being implemented and being followed through.
Coerced sterilizations are not as far in the distant past as you might think. In 2013, the Center for Investigative Reporting revealed that doctors in the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation sterilized nearly 150 female inmates from 2006 to 2010 without required state approval. It wasn't until a year later that California officially banned coerced sterilizations as a form of birth control in prisons. And just last year, lawyers for more than 50 women detained in a Georgia ICE detention center say they were forced or pressured into having unnecessary gynecological procedures, including hysterectomies. Investigations are still ongoing. The Biden administration is discontinuing use of that facility.
And there's other pictures of babies everywhere. She just loved children.
Although her great aunt passed away before she could receive reparations, Stacy is determined to keep her memory alive.
I just feel it in my heart to share more about her and more about this journey.
Tragically, these practices are not just a dark chapter of history. Reports of forced sterilization and reproductive coercion continue to emerge, particularly in marginalized communities. In 2020, reports surfaced of forced sterilizations in ICE detention centers in the United States.
Forced sterilizations in 2020, sadly, as American as apple pie. We know of at least 17 women in ICE custody who've had hysterectomies without their consent.
Who has removed their reproductive organs for no medical reason.
It's wrong on so many levels, but when you look back at our history, the roadmap for how we got here is very clear. We need to talk about the origins of forced sterilization, and that starts with eugenics, selective breeding to create a better race. In the early 1900s, there was fear-mongering about a genetic invasion. Many white Americans were afraid of losing their so-called purity. Demands for building a wall and anti-immigrant laws took off. Sound familiar? Some of the most elite scientists and thinkers in the country came up with a solution. Keep undesirables, basically anyone who wasn't white or physically abled, from having babies by forcibly sterilizing them. It was sold as an uncomplicated operation that just took a few minutes. Politicians and the US public ate it up. By 1907, Indiana passed the world's first mass sterilization law. At least 30 other states quickly followed suit. The official targets of this patchwork of eugenic laws included those labeled unfit, defective, and feeble-minded. But those were synonyms often used for immigrants and people of color. In California, the government mostly targeted Mexican women. In the South, it was Black women. At least 25% of Native American women were sterilized by the late 70s. Puerto Rico became a hotspot, with the highest sterilization rate in the world. Between 1930 and 1970, over a third of all women on the island were left unable to have children. Over 60,000 people had been forcibly sterilized in the US by the 70s, and there have been hundreds of thousands more where the consent was really questionable. It was also successful that the US started to export and sponsor forced sterilizations globally, from Peru and Guatemala to India and China. Soon, hundreds of thousands of women were robbed of their right to decide what to do with their bodies. Oh yeah, and Hitler? Well, he was so inspired by this US movement that he built the entire Nazi eugenics program in its image. Forced sterilization is now recognized as an act of genocide because it can wipe out entire ethnic groups. Okay, so we just covered a lot, and I know this is feeling pretty heavy. Let's get back to what's happening right now, to the woman sterilized in an ICE detention center. Could it be just a few rogue agents, an isolated incident? Sadly, it's not. If it's a well-documented pattern of abuse, it's systemic. This is what happens when we call people illegal. We've already seen ICE take children from their parents, sexually abuse people in their custody, let kids die in cells, repeatedly deny vital medical care, expose people to COVID. Our own staff constantly documents medical negligence and abuse from ICE. We've even sued the government over medical problems multiple times. These sterilizations show just how far ICE thinks they can push it. So now what? Reforms? Sensitivity trainings? Let them investigate themselves? You know the answer.
Addressing these issues requires a commitment to reproductive justice, which includes ensuring equitable access to fertility treatments and ending all forms of reproductive coercion. Every woman has the right to make informed and autonomous decisions about her reproductive health. Here's a clip of rally for women's reproductive rights held in downtown Los Angeles.
We will not go back!
Hundreds of activists gathered in front of LA City Hall this afternoon to support women's reproductive rights. An organization called Women's March Action coordinated the event, partly in protest of a recent ruling against access to the abortion drug mifepristone. LA Representative Maxine Waters, Attorney Gloria Allred, and Vice President Kamala Harris all spoke at the rally.
I personally do not believe in abortion. That's my decision and my choice and my belief. But no one should make that same decision for the woman next to me, and definitely not for my children. My children, whatever they decide to do, it is their choice, it's their body.
The FDA approved mifepristone more than 20 years ago. Medicinal abortions are now the most common method.
Reproductive rights go far beyond the right to choose an abortion. They encompass the right to access fertility treatments, the right to be free from coercion, and the right to reproductive autonomy.
As we shine a light on these critical issues, we must advocate for policies that support all aspects of reproductive health and justice. Only then can we ensure that every woman has the freedom to make choices about her own body and future. As our journey comes to an end, we stand at the crossroads of change and reflection.
We have delved into the depths of issues that shape the lives of not only women, but all the genders worldwide, issues often left in the shadows, yet critical to our collective progress.
From the fight against ageism to the quest for reproductive rights beyond abortion, from the call for menstrual equity to the acknowledgement of unpaid labor's value.
From challenging the stigma around sex work to addressing the dark history of forced sterilization, we have unveiled the multifaceted dimensions of feminism.
But this is not just a story of struggle. It is a testament to the resilience, courage, and indomitable spirit of women everywhere.
It is a call to action for all of us to listen, to learn, to advocate, and to stand together in solidarity.
For it is through unity that we find strength, and through understanding that we forge the path to true equality.